Cold water fishing is a relative term based on where you live in North America. For many southern bass anglers, fishing in 40-degree water is generally considered extraordinarily tough conditions to catch bass. In the North Country, where bass have a far shorter growing season, they have to feed when they can. Many of these fish live under the ice for 4 to 5 months throughout a year. Believe it or not, the Angling Edge staff targets smallmouth and largemouth bass through the ice. During cold water windows, suspending or slow-moving lures can be absolutely magical. Let's join Al and Troy Lindner with more cold water bass fishing logic and tactics.
I love that Shadow Rap, the original one. You got to go down and deep it in cold water and got to get some depth. That's the bait. Definitely the bait of choice.
Closed captioning is provided by Smooth Moves, adjustable boat seat suspensions for a smoother ride.
Ooh, look at that.
Something going there. Well, they're kind of lethargical in 42-degree water. I've seen a few of them moving around here. Yeah, look at it. Should barely wallow. barely wallow. Hang on. But it's a start fish. Troy and I are doing something we absolutely love to do. Now last year in fall, we left off on an amazing bite of big smallmouth, one of the best bites of big smallmouth I've ever had in late fall. You know, in fact, that one day Troy got a 22-incher, you know, some real monsters. Then he headed back south for the winter, and it's spring, and every spring he comes back up here in the upper Midwest, and our first trip is almost always a smallmouth ice-out trip. You know, so the water is really cold, but we know what to expect. You know, we're on water that's 40 to 42, maybe 43 degrees. But we know how to catch a few of them here and there, and I think we'll get a couple big ones to boot. We're on a lake I haven't been on for quite a few years. Yeah, I know the lake pretty well. I've been here before years ago, but I'd say it's been 6, 7 years since I've been on this lake. I've seen some fish here, probably a half a dozen of them laying down there on my Mega Live. I can't look at it. There's one right there now too. You know, I can see them moving through here. We're fishing through some. You know, the afternoon might kick them up a little bit, but at least we got a start.
Yeah, the difference between last spring and this spring, one thing when you talk about electronics, this is the first time that I've seen the new Humminbird Mega Live. This is the first time I've actually seen it, not online or on TV. I'm actually in the boat fishing and kind of watching Dad use it up on the front of the boat. I don't know if he's gonna let me take the front at all, but it's pretty cool to see the fish move and react in real time. It's nice having 2 units on the console like this. You can see the boulders off to the right of the boat. Actually, there's some deeper boulders, it looks like, to the left of the boat. And then I have a nice map here. Actually, we're sitting on a waypoint there, nice depth contours. And then the Mega Live on the front. It's just kind of interesting always to see, you know, he has that forward-facing imaging there with the trolling motor, so it is interesting to see the depth up there. I can also kind of recognize the weeds, and when he kicks us actually to the right and the left, it kind of gives me a little idea what the cover looks like. You know, I can see the structure here, and this gives me a little bit better what the cover, and this obviously is a crystal clear image of the boulders exactly around to the boat to the right. Oh, there's big boulders right there. All right, I gotta make a cast. That felt like a bite. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
This segment is brought to you by Sunset Country, Ontario, Canada. You gotta come visit.
Okay. I threw back where you caught that one and Sure enough, this one, oh, this one might be a little bit more active than yours. It's gonna take me a second. I'll let you see if I can get this one.
There, look at that.
Okay.
Look at how fat they are. Look at that. These are those Dakota fish. Oh, Troy, did he come off?
Yeah.
Look at how fat they are. I mean, they're built like tanks, man. Yeah, you know, let's see. We've been out for a while. The morning bite was sucking wind. You know, now we're getting out here. The afternoon bite starting to pull a few of these fish in. It's getting their interest. It's 40, warmed up to surface temp of 43, with no wind.
To get a little better understanding of where these fish are right now, let's rewind. Basically just a little over a week ago, this lake was actually covered with ice.
In the North Country, smallmouth bass live under the ice for a large portion of the year. These overwintering locations are generally deeper boulder flats in depths from 20 to 30 feet of water. In some cases, these wintering holes may be holding monstrous schools of big brown bass. When the ice finally melts in the spring, the first shallow movement revolves around two critical factors that bass need at this time: warmth and food. The best spring areas are often expansive rock and gravel flats around 4 to 8 feet deep, which are the exact same flats where they'll eventually spawn. Now keep in mind, not all the fish do the same thing at the same time. They move a lot, and I mean a lot, based on any changing environmental conditions. Example, if you have 3 stable warm days, expect lots of fish to quickly move up into these flats. But during a spring cold front, smallmouths will move and can often be found staging along the perimeter of the flat, say in 10 to 15 feet of water. One good point to remember is that these fish tend to be aggressive during this first shallow movement. Day in and day out, horizontal lures like jerkbaits and finesse swim baits tend to shine. Seen sometimes this whole flat just can light up with them. Let me spin around and go back on the point here. I think these fish are just coming in from that deeper, they're coming in out of the deep water. That's their contact point, this point. Then they'll come up and spread. The spot that we're fishing on now is a main migration route for these fish that have been wintering in deep water. If you look at this massive structure, big giant flat behind us that they're gonna go up on and eventually spawn on with big boulders, and they're gonna get there now. But the first point, this point goes out and drops off the deep water pretty quick with rocks on it. That's the first contact point. These fish we're catching here are right up on this. As the day goes on, a few more keep coming up, coming up, coming up. We'll probably catch some fish going back down this way. Just, the sun is waking them up.
You know, when you're looking at water temps right now in that 42, 43, 44 degrees, very early season, there's a few baits that are must-haves that you want tied on to the end of your line this time of year.
Like we said earlier, think horizontal running lures when the water temps are in the low 40 to 50 degree range. 3 top choices are suspending jerkbaits, finesse swim baits, and hair jigs. Keep in mind that because of the cold water temperature, these fish are somewhat lethargic, but they're still more than willing to bite. The key to getting bit is to get a bait moving slowly at their level. That's why suspending jerkbaits are a mainstay. The Rapala X-Rap is a known producer at this time frame, especially if the fish are up on a flat in that 4 to 8 foot range. Next, the key is figuring out how long to pause the bait. With water in the low 40s, you may have to let that bait sit for 4 to 5 seconds and let the hackle teaser tail entice sluggish fish into striking the bait. Secondly, we use a lot of big bite baits, and a 3.5 suicide shad rigged on a light jig head can be deadly. The beauty of this swim bait is you can fish it from the shallows to the deep depending on your retrieve speed and jig weight. Jig weight is really important. We like to use a light 1/16 and 1/8 ounce VMC finesse half moon jig, which enables you to really slow down the bait and roll it along just right. Big Bite has an incredible selection of lifelike color patterns, which can make a big difference when the fish are finicky. Third, the VMC Marabou hair jig can be a silent killer. In fact, a simple do-nothing horizontal retrieve can sometimes outproduce every other bait at the start of the fishing season. Cast it out, let it sink 2 or 3 feet near the bottom, then just simply reel it steady and slow back. Finally, the Shadow Rap Deep is a money bait when those fish are out in that 10 to 15 foot range off the flat. We often make a long cast off the back of the boat, get the Minn Kota on at about 30%, and simply jerk troll along the deep break line. We can cover so much water doing this, and the best part is that your bait is always at the depth, working with no dead time. The bottom line is you need to have horizontal running lures that you can fish up on a flat, on the edge, and slightly off the break to be truly a successful ice-out smallmouth fisherman. You know, we got those handful of known producing baits for this real early ice-out bite when it's so cold, the water temperature is so cold. But at no time will both of us be throwing the exact same bait. He's throwing here, I'll be jerking. Yeah, you know, as an example. If he's jerking, I'll be swimming a boot tail, but we won't both be throwing the exact same thing. And it's amazing how you see the difference. How the fish will bite one thing, they won't, and then you might see a little pattern a little later, a different pot of fish on something else. So I mean, you gotta be, these rods rigged right, and don't be afraid to grab a different rod, but don't fish the same thing the other guy is fishing. Got her that time. Let's see what we got going here. I'm gonna spot lock here a minute. Feels like a real good brown bass.
We are loaded for bear. We got
pikes. There's so many different ways to fish for walleye. Dependability and efficiency.
Simple, fast, and easy.
The best rods on the planet. They like to eat when you're throwing the right thing.
You don't have all bluebird flat calm days.
Just a perfect eating size fish.
See, that's what I'm talking about, these Daiwa drags.
We got walleye stuff, we got crappie stuff, we got pike stuff.
It
Big
is.
walleye.
Oh, it's a big walleye.
You want a net on that one?
Yeah. That's what I had before. I don't know if it's the same fish or not.
That's a nice walleye.
That's a big walleye. That's the beauty of this time of the year. You know, what we're doing here, these walleyes are in pre-spawn. And, you know, throwing these baits that we're throwing, you get some bonuses every now and then, like this. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. You know, the walleye spawn about 44 to 48. You know, so they're, you know, she's carrying nice. That other one I had before this was probably a big gal like this one. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Outstanding. The jerkbait rod that I'm throwing today is really sweet. It's the new Legend Tournament Series from St. Croix. And they did a tweaking on the Legend Tournament Series, and it's really, really good. This one is 6'8", medium power, extra fast. And it's great for jerkbait fishing. And my reel is a Daiwa Kage MQLT, and it's really sweet. 2500 series XH. It's a deadly combination. Drags that Daiwa has, it's like a fine-tuned watch. They don't make junk. They make great stuff.
So they got that fish and we spot lock down, and it's a nice thing about that Minn Kota spot lock. It's subtle adjustments on it, and it's very quiet, and it's really important when you're fishing shallow fish like this. They can be a little bit spooky.
In spring of the year, when a lot of fish are in shallow water, like walleyes, smallmouth, largemouth, crappies, bluegills, you know, a good pair of sunglasses is key, even on a slightly overcast day like this, to knock out the haze. And you could see little mats of weeds, you could see the boulder, the spot on the spot, and without them, I can't say enough, it's one of the key aids, you know, to catching fish in shallow water.
Yeah, these wavy labels, they have fantastic lenses, whether you choose the plastic option or glass. They're very comfortable to wear, and a big thing is they have a lifetime warranty, which is you know, which is kind of rare when you're looking at all the different sunglass choices out there. A lifetime warranty. You know, some of the finer points of hair jigging, especially if you're myself here in the back of the boat, you can just cast it out, drag it off the back, or else just cast it off the side. I like to reel it just kind of nice and slow, and actually like to hit off, you know, especially when the weed growth isn't up, I want it hitting off some of those rocks and just kind of bouncing off them, and a lot of times that'll trigger, you know, those smallmouth to bite, where it's kind of swimming along, bounces off a rock, and then they'll bite it. And the other nice thing, if you have somebody on the front, like my dad's fishing a jerkbait, I can just throw the hair jig off the back like this.
Got him. Got
and
him.
just kind of drag it and set the hook.
Got him.
When he's not setting the hook on the front.
This boat is rigged up about as nice.
Easy to use, and it flat out works.
It's a must-have when you're talking about big waves. Well, these trout are so darn tough.
This bait is legendary.
So that was on a number 8 Shad Rap.
Your style of boat control is really key.
One that was there from the very beginning.
You want to be able to see in the water. The adventure begins.
You know, this particular rod I've got Suffolk's braid on here, you know, and I got about a 7 or 8 foot Suffolk's fluorocarbon leader. And this is a great combo. You got sensitivity, casting distance, everything. I use this a lot. You know, when I'm jerking like this, we're moving along pretty fast. I go 1, 2, 3, then pause for a long time. 1, 2, 3, pause for a long time. I'm fishing flats that are anywhere from 4 to maybe 8 foot. You know, so that's it. It's boom, 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 pause. Boom, 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 pause. Now, when I have some deeper fish, like some of these other deeper structures that we've been on, yeah, you know, where I'm throwing the shadow rap, the pause is a lot longer when you're deeper. You know, I'm pausing a lot longer when I'm trying to call those fish. Let's say that shadow rap, it goes deeper than this bait. The shadow rap will go down. Let's say I've got fish in 12 feet of water, 10, 12 feet, and a lot of our lakes, that's pretty typical this time of the year. You know, so you got these fish, you could see them down there 2, 3 feet off the bottom, and you want that bait, that shadow rap will get down there, and I'll use that with pure straight fluorocarbon, and it pulls the bait down. You get a little more depth with the shadow wrap, the fluorocarbon versus the braid gives you a little more depth. Fluorocarbon's heavy, it pulls the bait, and you leave it sit longer, and it's a slow sink. You know, so you get deeper. Remember that strike zone is really small now. Those fish could see it, but they're not going to run a long distance when that water's in the 40s. So yeah, you know, it's all what's the strike zone to the pause to the cadence. All of those things come into play. A little bit better one here. You know, we might be onto something jerk trolling these big flats, Troy. Look at that. That's a pretty good one. You're getting up there, really getting up there in size. You know, it's amazing to me, being a smallmouth fanatic my whole life. These are my favorite fish. There's no question about it. And the smallmouth explosion that you see all over the country just continues. It's all over Canada. It's in lakes, rivers, or reservoirs. The smallmouth boom is hot and heavy. But another area that it's really interesting to me is in the states west of the Mississippi River. States like South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho as an example. Many people believe the next world record smallmouth is going to come out of Idaho. And these western reservoirs, rivers, and lakes, the smallmouth have adapted extremely well in all of them. Troy's fished all of the Colorado River system, from Powell to Meade to Havasu, all the way down. You were even catching smallmouth almost on the Mexico border?
Yeah, that was actually back in Arizona just a few weeks ago. And well, the air temps down there at the time were about 90 degrees, a little bit different than what we have here. Those are the ones I want us to.
Got him.
Oh,
good one.
Whoa.
Good one. Got him. That's the bait. Definitely the bait of choice. Right, Troy? When is it too early to come out for the smallmouth bass? Never. The transition area, they're biting under the ice if you know where they winter. Then you give them about 5 to 7 days after ice out, and they're ready to chew again. One thing about smallmouth, they like to bite, they like to fight. Isn't that a good combination? That's why it's my favorite fish, Troy's favorite fish, and many of the guys I work with. Hey, I get lots of emails on a regular basis. I just want to read this one to you. And it was titled, True Inspirational Humor, True Story. A longtime viewer of your fishing shows and one who truly appreciates your inspirational endings to your shows, I thought I would share this true story. A colleague of mine was stricken when in his mid-50s with a very strange nerve-based illness that after years of treatments and therapies continued to degrade his mobility until eventually he lost the use of his legs and generally became depressed about his failing condition. Since he was unable to do many of the general home maintenance projects any longer, most of the work had to be hired out. As he sat in his wheelchair one morning feeling bad and a bit depressed, he got a text message on his phone. The message was short and simple. Jesus will be there shortly. Shocked by the message, my friend started thinking, the end is near, and Lord, I'm not ready to go yet, he thought. What will I say if Jesus actually comes for me? Well, his mind was put to ease when later that day there was a knock on his door. It wasn't Jesus. It was Jesus, pronounced Jesus, a Hispanic worker there to do some roof repair. Needless to say, my friend was relieved to know he still had time to finish his divinely assigned task here on earth. A little bit of humor, but some serious note behind the humor. When our time comes, and it's going to come for all of us, do you have the peace of God in your heart because of the shed blood of Jesus? That when it's time to check out, you're going to go to heaven? Something to think about this week. Hey, from all of us here at The Edge, you have a great fishing season. We'll see you on the water.